Greetings from True Holiness Deliverance Temple. I am Minister Shamika Dotson, and we would like to welcome you to the story behind True Holiness, where Pastor Jeremy D. Seward and Evangelist Teresa A. Seward will be interviewed by anchor Tom Britt. You will now hear a selection from J. Seward, and afterwards, you will be in the hands of very own Mr. Tom Britt.
Come on, everybody, clap those hands. Lord, I'm grateful. Lord, you've done so much for me. Lord, so grateful. I can't live without your love. Lord, you are my, everybody say, Lord.
Lord, I'm grateful.
Lord, you
Lord, you've done so much for me. Lord, so grateful. I can't live without your love.
come on.
Lord, you are my
Everybody
life.
say, Lord.
Lord, I'm grateful.
Lord, you done.
Lord, you've done so much for me. Lord, so grateful. I can't live without your love.
Can we do it one more
Lord,
time?
you are my
Everybody
life.
say, Lord.
Lord, I'm grateful.
Lord, you done.
Lord, you've done so much for me. Lord, so grateful.
Let's take it
I
out.
can't live without your love. Lord, you are my life.
I can't live without your love. I can't live without your love. I can't live without your love. I can't live without you. Everybody
I
say,
can't live without your love. I can't live without your love. I can't live without your love. I can't live
come on.
without
I
your love.
can't live.
I can't live without your love. 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 I can't breathe 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 without your love. I can't move without your love. I can't move without your love. I can't move without your love. I can't move.
Now everybody clap those hands.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh. Now everybody say, hold on,
Hold on.
change is coming.
Change is coming.
Hold on,
Hold on.
don't you worry about a thing. Hold on,
Hold on.
you can make it.
You can make it.
Hold on,
Hold on.
everything gonna be alright. Hold on,
Hold on.
change is coming.
Change is coming.
Hold on,
Hold on.
don't you worry about a thing.
Hold on.
You can make it.
You can make it.
Hold on,
Hold
here we go.
on.
Everything gonna be alright.
Everything's gonna be
Everything
alright.
gonna be
Everything's gonna be
alright.
alright. Everything's gonna be
Everything
alright.
gonna be
Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright. Everything's gonna be alright.
Come on, clap those hands. Let's do it one more time. Everything gon' be alright. Everything gon' be alright. Everything gon' be alright. Everything gon' be alright. Hold on. Change is coming.
Change is coming.
Hold
thank you. Having church here on a Saturday afternoon. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. And I particularly like that tambourine player. Eli, I think was his name, right? Yeah, I like that. I met him out there in the hall. I said, Eli, very biblical name. Yeah, yeah, very biblical name. Thank you for inviting me to come over today. Thank you very much. And I've been really blessed by, I had a little meeting with the team the other night, and we talked, and then met with the pastor and evangelist, and really felt the presence of the Lord for this gathering this afternoon.
Yes, yes.
And the praise team, I like that. Yeah, just crank it right up. Yeah, yeah. Just don't wait on it. Just go ahead and go for it, right? Yeah.
Amen.
Well, we're here to talk about the history and True Holiness Deliverance Temple established in April 15th, 1990.
Amen.
By evangelist Teresa Seward and founder along with her husband Bishop W.E. Seward.
Amen. Yes, it was.
They started with 7 members
Yes, we did.
on Main Street. That's faith, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Yes, it
I look back in history to maybe just gain a perspective on maybe what was going on at that time in the country when you would establish a church. And I found a few interesting facts. Just before its establishment, U.S. President George W. Bush posthumously awards Jesse Owens the Congressional Gold Medal for his abilities. And then just after April 25th, the Space Shuttle Discovery places the Hubble Space Telescope into orbit. It's still going today.
Okay.
And True Holiness Deliverance is still going today. That's a good thing, isn't it? Yeah, it really is. And I think here's a very important point that we have to think about. And we may have forgotten about it now since times are a little bit better now. But the country was going into a depression. Beginning a church, beginning a ministry, trying to establish some place for people to worship. And the country's going into a depression. But then I thought about it, and I thought, perhaps people at that point needed church more then than they really thought when you go into a depression and you're struggling and you're trying to make ends meet and that sort of thing. And church provides help in all things, I think. And April, for you sports fans, I had to throw this one in. I just kind of found this one. April 2nd, the UNLV Rebels basketball team, they defeated the Duke Blue Devils to win the Division I NCAA championship. But I just thought we'd look back and just a little history there and talk about it, maybe, and put it in perspective how starting a church at that point was begun. I'm going to talk with evangelist Teresa Seward, founder, of course, along with her husband, as most of you know. And we want to talk about the history of the church. Tell us how it began on that first Easter. You know, we think about sometimes about the real first Easter and what really happened. And now we need to go back and perhaps talk a little bit about the history then. What was your feelings, what were your thoughts, and your husband's thoughts as you began this ministry?
Well, with me, it was scary. With him, he was comfortable. He was very courageous. He wasn't afraid and excited. I think the both of us was excited in starting a new chapter in our life and going out and doing something for the Lord and coming to a city that we did not didn't really know, and coming and trying to find a place. It was very exciting. And the first day, the first service we had that Sunday, the building held about maybe 20 people. We had about maybe 15, something like that. And it was exciting. That first day took the fear away of feeling like, what is this we're doing? You know, I was very confident with my husband doing what he was doing. And it was exciting, very exciting.
I think anytime when you do anything in the name of the Lord, it's exciting, you know.
Yes,
Even
sir.
though it
Yes,
may
sir.
not be many people there, there's some excitement kind of bubbling inside of you, even if you don't show it at first. Talk about the leadership of your husband. I know from talking the other night, he went to Union University, I think. Is that right?
No, that was
it
Pastor
okay.
Jeremy.
Jeremy, okay, okay.
Yes,
Well, I
yes.
got my stories mixed up then. But
Yes,
talk
sir.
about your husband and his leadership and how he was just continue to go on and on and on and wanted to grow and change.
Yes, he was a man full of faith. When we started, like you said, in a storefront on Main Street. And he was working, and he came off his job, and I was working. And one day I come home, and to show that he was so much of faith, he had talked about building coming out of the storefront. And we was around the table saying we would get established. You know, we hadn't been here maybe about, about 8 months. And he was saying, I went and looked at some land, and the land we're on today. And he was saying, I'm going to build. I said, I thought we had a plan. So that scary feeling came again. But he was so, he had so much faith in God. And he was a man that when it came to the people of God, he wanted to provide the best for them. And I remember, I thank God for my mother-in-law and my father-in-law that put up their home that was the collateral for us to build the church. And 8 months into starting the ministry, we started building the church.
That's what you call stepping out on faith, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Stepping out on faith.
yes, sir.
And I was about to say that is interesting that your family would say, okay, we believe in what you're doing too, and we're willing to put
Yes,
our
sir.
home up and help you out. And that's very important to have supporters, don't you think, early on in a ministry?
It was. We still have one member that started with us, and that is Sister Brenda Dotson. She's here on today. That is a witness that everything was faith. He didn't look at the number. He didn't look at how much tithes or offering we were bringing in. He just stepped out. And even within the 8 months, he was not working. So that was faith. To start out with 7 members, and you have a family, then the 7 people was depending on them. So for him to have done that, and it lasted 15 years with him pastoring until the Lord called him home. And to the day he died, he was still that strong in faith.
Talk about when you took over leadership and began to lead the flock there, and your husband's passing, and here in the congregation and with the community. Talk about that.
When my husband passed, it wasn't on my mind about the church. It was just going through dealing with him dying. And I woke up that Sunday, and I just said, there's no one. I got to do what he started. So we had a church in Lexington. I went there that Sunday morning and preached. And I asked, the message that I preached was who would go with me from the book of Ruth. And so I left that service, came here to Milan, and had to preach to the congregation here, and I preached the same message.
I was about to ask you if you did that.
Yes, sir. I preached the same
That's
message.
okay. Yeah.
Yes, trying to feel my way. And I had said within myself that I was going to go home after that morning service, and I was going to cry and, just ask the Lord why. But it didn't turn out like that, because when I made the altar call, made it where people could come and who wanted to give their lives to the Lord, I think it was about 4 people that came. And as I was standing there, and I think I said it over the mic, I said I was going home to cry, but since those people wanted to be saved, I said we having church Sunday night. And from there, amen. And from there, God gave me the strength. One thing that I took from my husband, he did not wallow in anything. He picked himself up anytime that it was a chaos. He picked himself up. So in my mind, all I could see was, you can't quit. And one message that he had preached was, you can't park here. So I picked myself up, thought about, well, as we was talking in the office, that God has purpose, and God had a purpose for my life, and I said I got to go on. I can't do what my flesh wants me to do. I got to do what the Spirit wants me to do, and that was to lead God's people. And I got to commend the people, because there was no doubt in their mind. There was no, what are you doing? Are you sure? All I said is, we having church, and they said when. So I commend them for the 10 years I did pastor, that they supported me 100%.
And you were speaking there, too, sometimes when there are not many folks there, but, you know, when one or two are gathered together, I believe is very important, right?
Yes,
to go ahead on, and do something else. Speak to how you passed the leadership on to your son, Jeremy, and making that decision and feeling that was the right thing to do.
It wasn't hard. We had to tear down the first sanctuary that we was in, and we congregated at Poe Clark for, I think it was about 7-8 months while we were building. And the Lord had given me that he was going to be the next pastor. And I got a couple of other saints, the deacons and their wives, and the secretary, and some of the people that had been in church for a while. And I had told them, I said, I want to tell you all something that is going to happen. I don't know when, but I know it's going to happen, and that is, he was brother then. And I said, Brother Jeremy will be pastor one day, and I just need you all to pray with me. So as the years went, that 9.5 years, I got them together again, and I said, I feel like God is leading me to step down and to give it to him. So we got together, and we prayed about it for about a month. And for that year, I don't know if the congregation knew it, but I had I was stepping down. I would only speak once a month, and I would let him speak to get a feel of it, and for the people to, not that they didn't believe in him, but to accept the change, because sometimes change is hard to accept. So from there, he got up and preached one Sunday, and the Lord spoke to me in the pulpit and said, give it to him. So that Sunday, I spoke to the congregation, and I said, this is the Sunday that he will officially be pastor. But we did have a ordination service for him, and that was the next year of April, and we ordained him and finalized it. And that's how it came to pass.
Yeah. Well, when you hear the Lord speak, you best react, right? All right. Now, Pastor, tell us about taking over from that moment and your thoughts and your feelings at that time as you began the pastorate here.
Yeah, it was exciting. I remember having the conversations with my mom at the house, telling her about the burden to pastor that I was feeling, and we would talk about it. And of course, she's a praying woman. She's a praying. Before she would make any haste decision, she was always, okay, I'm praying. And sometimes I would go to her and tell her how God would be dealing with me. And, she would look at me like you're looking at me now, and I wonder, did she hear what I said?
She didn't give you that mama look?
Yeah. Not so bad, not that so much, but it was like, she was hearing me. And I just wasn't getting the reaction and response that I wanted. But she was praying. And I remember the first year was exciting. It was a roller coaster. The people had to get used to me. I had to get used to them. I think they had to get used to me, more so me getting used to them, which is understandable because going from, some of them were here when Bishop Seward, my father, started the ministry, then going to her under her leadership for 10 years and now me. And so those different voices and understanding that we don't all lead the same, we don't speak the same, come from the same Bible. But, you know, as the era changed, the method of some things did as well. And I think just adjustment, just trying to acclimate to a new environment.
Well, we're all human, and sometimes we don't like change, whatever it is. Even though it is the right change, it takes a while to become comfortable and acclimate and that sort of thing. Talk about the years and maybe how you feel about some of the accomplishments of the church and how it's ministered to this community and to out. Of course, we talked about back there a while ago, the church is actually outside these doors.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. The church has done, I think, very well. I can go all the way back to my father's ministry, leading up even to now, how God has, and I'm always preaching and teaching how God is this great God, and he's a God of progression. And if you're stagnant, you need to reevaluate whether God is still there or not, because God is always, moving, he's acting, he's speaking. And so under my father's leadership, tent revivals.
Amen.
Tent revivals.
I remember going to them when I was a kid. Yeah.
And so a lot of those, he was known, little black man, tent revival. Yeah, the little black skinny man. Yeah, and he would stay out there days. And when he didn't have a tent, it was just, he didn't need a tent. He really didn't need chairs. He just needed a podium and some music and the speakers and things like that. And so we would just go out. He was always outside doing, passing out handbills, flyers. You don't see that a lot now. But he was doing that under my mother's leadership, same thing. Under my leadership, they did it a lot more than I do it now. But I've had a few outside services. But we did something differently. Under my leadership, we started having giveaways, giving away clothing, furniture, haircuts, things like that. Different types of services that we started having to reach out to the community, telling people to invite different people out to those services and things like that. So I'm definitely trying to do ministry outside of these four walls. My goal is to equip the members that I have here to help me take this gospel out. Amen. And, we've been going through a series talking about the attributes of God. And in doing so, I'm always asking them, how is it that you can learn about such a great God and you not want to share it with somebody?
That's right.
We're learning the love of God and how that love applies and affects your life. And then you will want that to happen to somebody else's life if you have the heart of God. So, yeah, that's the vision.
Yeah, I think I hear you saying, that we know when somebody's hungry, we know when somebody's hurting, and we know that we need to help them before we minister to them, because you're not going to listen very much if they're hungry and needy, and you need to help their needs before you go on. A vision for the future, have you thought about that much? Or?
Yes, a little bit. Well, not a little bit, a lot. Vision for the future is to, I've been doing something at my ministry, if they'll be honest. I've been shaking us up a little bit, a whole lot.
Yes.
Going deeper into the scriptures, getting us to think, challenging us, challenging our faith, stretching our thinking, stretching our hearts from what we've been taught in church years ago to what God is doing now. So to continue to do that, to go into the depth of God. And as we're doing that, also reaching out into the community a lot more. I mean, I'm talking about, I see now it really is, you have to leave here. I know I keep saying that. And I hear a lot of churches saying that, and saying it is nice. It sounds good.
Yes, it does.
But actually doing it, we have to do it. And so my vision in the future is just to continue to go out and just really try to love on the people, winning their hearts, showing them that God is able in our time of need and of depression, that he's able. He's the same God, the same God that saved them back in the 60s and 50s and 70s, that he's a God of the 21st century. He's still saving today. And a lot of times that makes us uncomfortable how he saves. And I think, we look for God to, this is where I challenge my traditional people. If God doesn't do it like he did it to you, doesn't mean that God's not doing it.
Amen.
Just because it looks different today doesn't mean God's not doing it. We just have to accept what God is doing today. Jump on board to what God is doing and just continue to go forward, progress.
We do live in different times
Definitely.
than when I was growing up and
Yes,
when
we
many
do.
of you were growing up. And we face different challenges now, so many other ways of, that get people's attention away from coming to church and trying to participate.
Yeah.
That's a challenge that churches have to face, right?
It is. It's a big challenge. The one thing that I remember, and maybe because I was just a pew boy then, not really paying attention, but it seems like then the desire and people's hearts were really on fire for God to really come and get involved in worship, get involved in ministry. Today it's a challenge. It's almost like we want to come in, we want God for ourselves, and that's it. And how we want him. And it's like, as long as God is doing it for my family, as long as God is doing it for me, as long as God is doing it for my finances, whatever the concern may be, it's like we're fine. But in Acts, I'm constantly reminding the people, God called us out to go be witnesses into the world. And sometimes they put, the members will put the burden on the leader, as if the leader is supposed to carry this load by himself or herself. But that's not the case. We're all supposed to be witnesses of this precious gospel. And it is a challenge. But I do, Mr. Tom, I feel like if they get in the right position with God so that he can ignite the heart and the mind, get their first love back,
Amen. Amen.
we can do ministry, and ministry won't be hard to do. And I mean, when you say 2 or 3 gathered together in his name, he'll be in the midst. And just imagine if 2 or 3, if you get 20, if you get 50. Amen. It doesn't take a lot of people to do ministry. It just takes willing people, to want to do ministry.
Right. Is there anything either of you would like to add before we kind of wind down and hear some more from the praise team?
No.
I just say that I thank God for the hand of God being on this ministry, because sometimes when a leader dies, the ministry dies too, and the people scatter. But I give God the glory because I realize it's God that sent my husband to Milan to establish the church. And it wasn't that it was based on him. It was based on God. And to see 28 years being in the city, 13 years he's been dead, and we're still progressing forward, I give God the glory.
And I have to say this, I'll say this for a reason. Right now, I do feel like this is the right time to say this, because my mother, when she, when she stepped up, she didn't have a lot of time to, really grieve. Being around the house, I was, I think, 18 when my father passed. I was 18, and so just, not really a man. I'm just graduating high school. And just her having to deal with my brother, me, the church, herself, the death, that's a lot.
Big load, yeah.
That's a heavy load and I know they talk about women being the weaker vessel, but I saw strength in her. I saw courage, and I remember she called, me and my brother in the room. She says, we have to. Well, I have to lead this church. What are y'all gonna do? Like, we're with you. We're with you. And in brief, I can remember she might not want me to say this, but I'm gonna say it because I want to show you where her heart was. She did not lose a desire and a love for God when he passed. So many people, even their spouses, are wrapped up in the individual, and they don't get wrapped up in God. And she was so caught up in God and had a heart for ministry. I remember her taking the policy from my father's death, paying off the church, putting her money right back into the ministry. I mean, donations to members, helping out family. I mean, she, and I tell her now, because every now and again, she needs a little money. You would have that money had you not given it to, but her heart. And she has, and the thing is, Mr. Tom, she has no regrets. Since I've never heard her say, I wish I would have never done that. And, she's just, and she just to know she, as I look back, that she's done all of that, accomplished all of that. What they, when they counted her out, said, that church wouldn't last a year, church wouldn't last a month. And here it is, 2018. Amen. We're still here. So.
While you were speaking, it came to mind, I think it's in Matthew, to whom much is given, much is required.
That's right.
And I think that's what we have seen at this point with the leadership of this church. Anything else before we hear from the praise team again? Anybody else? All right, praise team, come on back up, and we want to hear from you.
Come on, everybody, clap those hands. How many out there is blessed? It's not a season, it's a new day. Fresh anointing flowing my way. Season of power and prosperity. It's not a season already on me. It's not.
Hey, fresh anointing flowing my way. Season of power, and prosperity. It's not a season. It's already on me. It's not a season. It's a new day. A fresh anointing flowing my way. Season of power and prosperity. It's not a season. It's already on me.
I'm living in overflow. I'm living in overflow, yeah.
I'm living in the overflow. 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 I'm living in the overflow.
I got more than enough.
service starting at 11 a.m. We have Wednesday night service starting at 6:30. You don't want to miss it. And we have upcoming August 16th and 17th at 7 p.m. nightly, our I Believe conference. We will have wonderful speakers, so come on out to the I Believe and let your faith be lifted up.
Come on, as we go home, I'm telling you,
Late in the midnight
God
hour,
won't turn around. I'm telling you,
late in the midnight
God
hour,
won't turn
God's
around.
gonna turn it around.
God won't turn
God's
around.
gonna turn it around.
God won't turn
God's
around.
gonna turn it around.
God won't turn
God's
around.
gonna turn it around.
God won't turn around.
God's gonna
God
turn
bless you.
around.
Go hug your neighbor and tell him that you love him. Thank you, Mr. Tom Britt. We see you Sunday morning. Sunday morning celebration at 11 a.m. Thank you for tuning in.